Hey, it's Clayton here from howtodrawcomics.net and bartonbrostudios.com, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to draw the female torso. Now if you'd like to delve deeper into this topic, I have got a full class that focuses specifically on drawing female torsos. It'll get into everything from the foundations to the anatomy, how to draw it in different positions from different perspectives. So if this is something you'd really like to get a handle on, then I highly suggest that you check it out. I've got a link to it in the description below. It is available on both howtodrawcomics.net and Skillshare. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this tutorial. Okay, so I'm just going to sketch something up fairly lightly here to start out with. This is the chest vest that we have become well acquainted with at this point. And I'm going to just drop down that muscle tube, the middle bit that joins the pelvis and the chest together, and start to draw out the shape of the bottom of the pelvis from there before actually segmenting away the pelvis and separating it from that area. I just find that works a little better for me sometimes, for some reason. Now, I am going to make the front of the pelvis face in this direction, while the chest faces in the opposite direction. And I'm going to take some time to just tweak the shape of the torso here. I'm going to add in the legs. Okay, so we've got the front, we've got the side, and we've got the main leg shape, the main leg form there on that side of her body. And then I'm going to drop this side of the pelvis down, thinking about the tilt of the shoulders and the hips in comparison to one another. And I'm going to draw out this leg and pull it out in this direction. Okay. And I think that's looking fairly good. That's a good place for us to start. You can get a real sense for the movement, a real sense for the pose. I do think that I need to add some additional balance here, so I'm going to pull the chest back a little. Remember that this foundational stage is everything in order to figure out what will make this, in order to ensure the success, essentially, of our torso drawing. And I'm really liking the direction that it's going in so far. I think that this is a good pose, it's aesthetically pleasing, there's a decent amount of movement in it, there's some dynamism within it, and every part of the body, no matter what the pose, should feel like it's got movement in it. We'll draw in the armholes now. And I almost feel like we could pull the torso over just that little bit more there, which I think we will do. I'll bring the hips up. Again, I'm looking at the outside shape of the body at this point. And I think that just about does it. That's looking good to me. Wonderful. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and convert this to blue and draw right in on top. And we're going to draw out the anatomy. Now, I'm not going to be drawing every muscle group in here. I don't need to, because in a final finished illustration of the female torso, a lot of the definition of the muscles is going to be fairly subtle. We're not going to need to add that much in to complete this drawing, in fact. women tend to have more fat throughout their body due to hormones and biology and things like that. And so they just appear softer in general. Now, as I work here, as I add in the anatomy, I'll go through another pass of reshaping the body if I think that it needs to be reshapen. Now I have got the collarbone here, which I'll add in, leading it up into the shoulder section where we're going to join it onto the deltoids. And you can see that I'm getting into some of the muscle groups of the shoulder there. That's going to help me to define its shape, to figure out what its shape really needs to be. And that's really what I use my knowledge in anatomy for, is just defining shape. That's what it's all about, especially when it comes to drawing female characters. That's what you really want to be focused on. Because shape is your biggest ally there. It's really all you've got to work with. Okay, so I'm going to take the time to draw out some of her arm. So I'll draw that out. Just very roughly sketching it in there, because these are more completed representations of the female torso. I think that we can take the time to do that. It'll help us to position the shoulders a little bit easier as well. Each part of the body sort of informs the others, I've found. So that's going to be our shoulder there. And we can have her arm come out a little bit further at the top here. Again, just balancing that pose. And at this point, we're just making it up. This is all coming from our imagination, because we know how to use the fundamental model to define that pose to begin with. And now what we'll do is start to draw out some of the anatomy here that we'll be dealing with. I'm not going to be defining the abs here. I really don't feel like I need to. What I will do is lay in the serratus muscle and the obliques. They're going to be fairly prominent here. Around this section of the body. But then we'll lead the abdominal area down into the bottom of the pelvis. We've got this tendon that runs down the thigh, the inner leg. And then we've got the hip bone on either side. We'll add in the muscle that goes in around the top of that, kind of joins onto the butt as well, funnily enough. And then we've got the top quad of the leg, which we'll add in there. And we'll do that on both sides, in fact. We've got the thigh, the inner thigh. It's going to come through there. And then that is our basic anatomy sketch that we're going to use to form the basis of our finished female anatomy drawing. Now, I am going to make some tweaks here. I think that the breasts could probably hang a little lower. I feel like they're sitting too high up. I'm using my eye to judge that. And a lot of the time you'll find that most of you, like us, me, you, everybody has this natural intuition, whether they draw or not, of the proportions of the human body. That's why we can tell if something doesn't quite look right as far as proportions and measurements are concerned. So just keep that in mind. keep it in check. Make it something that you're observant of when it comes to drawing the female torso. Okay, so that is our anatomy layer placed down. Next up, let's draw in the final outline. Okay. And this is where we're going to neaten things up. This is how I would finish one of my torso drawings. And here, as I said before, what we're going to be depending on primarily is shape. That's what we want for the most part, is shape. Even if we only outlined the outer contours of this female torso that we've been drawing up, that'd probably be enough. It'd probably look great. Okay, now of course we've got the obliques here. There is going to be some definition where they reside. We might have a little indentation here just underneath the ribs, at least the bottom set of ribs, so we can draw that in. And usually they're going to lead into the abdominal muscles. So we can draw those out. But once again, there's not going to be a whole lot of detail here that we need to define. If we have got a fairly built woman, then maybe we'll show some of the details in the area where the serratus meets the obliques. That can work fine. I'm going to do some erasing here, just because I feel like I could define this area a little bit better. But for the most part, we can leave it at that. It's a fairly good female torso. We don't need to make it more complicated than that. At least the midsection. We're not done yet. Make no mistake. Okay. You can see that I'm adding line weights into the outer contours. You can see that I'm adding line weights to the outline of the female torso that I'm illustrating here. And I'm going to place in an indication of some of these leg muscles. You know, we do get a fairly obvious division running down the inner thigh, separating it from the front of the leg. And then I'm going to draw in the crotch. And as far as the leg muscles are concerned, I'm not really going to define them. I might define them more on a man, but not really a woman. I want the thighs to appear soft, and if I start adding in and defining muscle groups, it's just going to make them look hard and rock-like. So I don't want to do that. Next, we'll tackle the right-hand side of the female torso here. And for the most part, same deal. We can simply just add in an outline for this leg, because any additional definition is just not going to be necessary unless we're drawing a really fit muscular character, which honestly, this female torso already has that appearance, even without the additional defining of those muscle groups. So once again, it's It's really something that you want to be extremely wary of adding too much detail to the muscles of your female characters. Certainly only do that if you want them to appear super ripped. Okay, next up we've got the middle division, which we can add in. That's going to run down the belly from the top. Going to get my eraser out here and just clean this area up somewhat. There we go. And then we can start to outline the breasts. Now at this point, I can focus on just the line quality of the finished outline because I've figured out how big the breasts are going to be. I know generally what their shape is going to entail. And so I've moved on from that phase of the drawing, leaving space in my mind to focus on the final aesthetics and get those right. Okay, I'm making my way around the breast on the opposite side of the body. I'm taking a little bit of time, but I am working fairly fast. And if I notice any tweaks do need to be made to the shape of the breast or any other part of the body for that matter, I'll get my eraser out and I'll certainly go ahead and do some additional sculpting if need be. Everything is changeable, especially if you're working digitally. So never feel like you have to stick with anything that isn't quite working, because you can always go back and tweak it, always. I'm going to go ahead here and just erase that down a little. Got our shoulder muscle there. And we don't really need to articulate the divisions in the deltoids on a regular female character. We can just leave it to the outline to inform the viewer on what's going on in that area. And that's all we'll need. Place in the collarbone on the opposite side now. Again, that's just going to be a basic outline. Nothing too fancy. Oftentimes, the simpler the better when it comes to drawing female characters. And once we've got the shoulder drawn in, we'll place it in the bottom of the arm. This is where the bicep would be. Then we've got the tricep. And then finally, to finish off this female character, what I'm going to do is just add in a quick outline for the neck, and that will be that. So the neck will be consisting of something like this. We'll see those trapezius muscles drop down from the back sides of the neck. But unlike a man, those trapezius muscles are going to have quite a deep dip. Okay, and so this will be what we're left with. We don't have to apply too much detail to the anatomy of the neck. That's not going to be required. And in fact, we can pretty much leave it at that. We can add in the lateral muscles. We did somewhat forget those, so we'll draw those in. But other than that, we've pretty much completed this example of a finished female torso. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the tutorial and that you got a ton of value out of it. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, I have got a full class that focuses specifically on female torsos, which this lesson is a part of. You can check it out via the links in the description below. It's available on both howtodrawcomics.net and Skillshare. It covers everything from the foundations to the anatomy, how to pose the female torso from a variety of different perspectives. So if this is something that you'd like to learn more about, then I can't recommend it enough. I tried to be as comprehensive as possible throughout this class. All right, other than that, thanks so much. Until next time, keep drawing.